Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that some stories and discussions in this episode of Radiant Resilience may touch on sensitive and potentially triggering topics. These may include themes of childhood sexual abuse, bullying, cancer and chronic illness, suicide and loss of a child, grief, depression, and addiction. Our goal is to share real life experiences in a respectful and empathetic manner, offering insights into the complexities of the human spirit and the journey towards resilience. However, we understand that some content might be difficult for listeners. We encourage you to prioritize your well being and discretion when deciding to listen. Please remember this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice or support. If you find yourself needing assistance, we urge you to seek help from qualified professionals or trusted support systems. Your mental and emotional health is important to us. Thank you for your courage and for joining us in a space of understanding and compassion.
Welcome back, everyone, to Radiant Resilience. I have with me today Andy Campbell. Andy is a resilient survivor and inspirational author who has overcome numerous life-altering challenges, a victim of childhood sexual abuse and bullying, the loss of his mother at an early age after her 11-year struggle against breast cancer, the eventual estrangement from his father, who was plagued by untreated PTSD, his struggle against stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and the loss of his youngest son to suicide. Despite enduring multiple surgeries, grueling chemotherapy treatments, and the tragic loss of his youngest child, he has demonstrated remarkable strength and perseverance and developed a deep understanding of resilience and knows firsthand what it takes to overcome monumental challenges. To share with others what he has learned through his experiences, Andy has written Overcoming Life's Toughest Setbacks, 15 Breakthrough Core Beliefs to Transform Challenges into Opportunities. In this book, readers can access actionable insights from the 15 core beliefs crafted to empower us to navigate through life's labyrinth. Your journey from experiencing life's storms to dancing in its rain unfolds in this book's insightful examples. Andy lives with his wife and remains actively engaged in the lives of his 3 remaining adult children as he continues to support his family while managing his own health challenges. His book shares the principles that have helped him navigate life's darkest moments, offering hope and guidance to others facing adversity. Whew, that's quite the bio, Andy.
Yeah, it is a little long.
But
Yeah,
welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
thank you. Thank you. By the
I
way, the bio is not nearly as long as when I went to a therapist after my son's passing for EMDR, if you've ever heard of EMDR.
I've heard of it. I haven't done it.
Yeah, she had a legal pad. She was writing down, like going through my bio.
Yeah.
And when she got to the 3rd page of the legal pad, I was like, can we just stop now? That's enough. I think you have enough to work with.
Yeah. Before we hit record, Andy was telling me that his 60th birthday is coming up this weekend or this week.
Yes,
Yes.
next week. Yes, next Friday, 4th of July.
Happy birthday. So
Thank
you've
you.
lived a long life and had lots of experiences. So,
Yeah, yeah. I must have. I do not remember the agreement I made before I got here, but it must have been something. It must
yeah.
have been a. I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand why I would have agreed to this, but there must be some purpose for it.
Yes, absolutely. I am very grateful that you are here today. I'm going to let you, that's a lot of stuff that's been happening in your life. So I'm going to let you decide where you feel like a good starting point is, and then you can go from there and tell us your story. And yeah, hopefully somebody listening will feel a little less alone in their own journey.
Yeah. So maybe we'll start there.
Yeah.
I don't know at what age it was. You go through some things, and there were some dark moments, obviously, and some difficult times. But at some point in my life, I remembered, separate from these core beliefs that over time, I refer to them as core beliefs. They were things that that I believe I have observed over the years. And I would collect one at a time. Tawny, I'm like a visual thinker. When you say words, some people hear words. I hear pictures. So I
Mm.
have to like paint a like when you're speaking, I'm painting a picture in my mind. And so what I would do is I don't know, maybe it was just dealing with things. as I began to understand something, I would have it would become a picture for me. And then, but you can't really tell a whole picture, and I can't might not be able to remember a picture. So I would create these phrases so that I could remember like a meta phrase.
Yeah.
And that would represent a picture to me of something.
Okay.
And so whenever things would happen, I would go back to that phrase and it would remind me of a picture of
Okay.
how, maybe it was something I learned about how to get through something. And I would have a visualization of what getting through it was like and at what moment did something happen or change or what did I observe someone else doing. And I would just write down these phrases. And at some point before I started writing down these what became the core beliefs, I was thinking, and I don't know what age it was, but it had to be like in my teenage years or something, late teenage years maybe. I started thinking my grandparents and my parents, my grandparents and their ancestors, they all lived very poor lives. Like these were row crop farmers from South Alabama, basically sharecrop farmers. And they had settled the land in 6 generations before the Scotch Irishman had married one of the daughters of Chief Manawa of the Creek Nation of the Muskogee Nation so they could work out a land deal. But they basically had nothing, right? They
Mhm.
built their cabin. And it dawned on me that through like all these generations, people like the population keeps growing. Things like people keep, families move on,
Yeah.
but they had to experience some really difficult things.
Yeah.
They had no toilet paper. They had no indoor plumbing. They had women didn't have sanitary products. There
Oh,
was nothing.
yeah.
And yet somehow,
Mm.
like they just lived. And
Yeah.
and maybe it's I heard someplace that in past generations, they didn't have time to think about like themselves to get introspective. You were too worried about the extrospective stuff, like how will I
Yeah.
eat? Will that bear kill me? Will my wife die in childbirth? Will this happen? Like, like
Yeah.
well, it was like everything, right? But I was thinking about that, visualizing, and I thought, like, how did they do it? And I don't mean like physically how to do it. Like, what kind of mindset would they have to have done that? And so I came up with these 6 words. Like I started from the left to the right. I'm doing it right now, like I'm
Yeah.
picturing it. But I would start like from the left to the right, and I would say they were successful. Okay, like in whatever. Okay, maybe not today. We think like monetarily successful. They don't have a vacation home there, but they were successful. They survived, and then they procreated, and then at least some of those survived. And so
Yeah.
generations went on, and so I started with they were successful. Like, how did they become successful? And I thought, I've read and heard this story since I was a child of Solomon's wisdom. And that was like the basis of Solomon's success. And I was like, they must have, I know some of them, so I know they weren't wise people, but they must have become wiser to
Yeah.
become successful. They had to have some level of wisdom.
Yeah.
And like, where would that come from? And my grandfather had this saying of experience is what you get just after you needed it. And so
Mm.
it's okay, then wisdom must be like you get experience. That's how you learn. But how do you stay around long enough to learn? And I was like, okay, you got to persevere, you got to have perseverance. And perseverance comes from determination. And then so I worked my way back till I got to this word honor. And I was like, maybe the starting point is do the honorable thing. Do
Mm.
what's honorable. Whatever that is in the moment, that's a hard thing to define. But I think
Yeah.
most of us know in that moment where we have a choice, we may not think of it in the word honorable, but we think the teller gave me an extra 20 by mistake. I should probably give it back.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we don't. Yeah. But the point is, like, we have that moment where we know what the right thing to do is.
Yeah.
And so I thought, if you start with honor, then when difficulty happens, that must be what gave them courage to
Mm.
keep going
Yeah.
because they felt like it was the honorable thing to do, right?
Yeah.
And so you can argue about whether it was right or wrong, but in their minds, they believed that was the right thing to do. And so when difficulty hit, it would give them courage. And then I thought if they showed courage, like over and over again, these little pieces of courage, then I think that's what people call determination. They'd
Mm.
say that person's Tony is determined.
Yeah.
And if you showed that a few times, then people will say that person just persists. They just persevere. They just won't go away.
Yeah.
And it's kind of it's like in the Bible they talk about you just pray unceasingly and eventually God gets tired of hearing it. It's like persevere, like persist, right?
Yeah.
And then persistence. through experience will get you wisdom and wisdom. So I wrote those down. I thought that's a pretty good way to think about it, to think about the life structure.
Yeah.
But then I had all these things that happened to me and around me. And I think there's three kinds of things that happen to us. There's the things that we contribute to that happen to us, both good and negative. But I think it's important we have to take our responsibility for what we do that
Yeah.
impacts us. That is different than taking responsibility for what someone else does to us. But it's kind of
Hmm.
like I was sexually abused as a child. I don't excuse people for that. I don't that happened, but there comes a point in one's life where you got to say, how long am I going to allow what they did to me to cause me to do bad things to myself or to do less positive things to myself?
Sometimes that's
Um,
easier, though, is to blame somebody else. For a lot of people, that's the easier way to go.
and I
To
think,
take your own
yeah,
trauma.
like your own contributions, not to that situation. I didn't
Right.
contribute to being molested, but at
No.
some point in my life, I'm drinking, I'm partying, and at some point, you
Mm,
got to look at it and say, wait a minute, why are you doing these things? Where
mhm.
you're doing it to cover up this pain or to get some relief from it. Is that the honorable thing to do? No, it's probably better if you confronted it, right? And then
Mhm.
you show a little courage. And then it's kind of like when you go to therapy and it's not just talk therapy, but they're really like ripping off the scabs and the wounds and dealing.
Mm,
And and you don't want to do it, but you have just enough courage to keep doing it.
yeah.
And then you get this feeling like you're just determined to do
Yeah.
something about it. That's kind of what gives you the perseverance to get through all the other stuff. Anyway, I put these words together, but that was like a life thing. That's like, okay, broadly in life, or like just either at a high level or at an individual decision level, like that seemed to work for me. It gave me some structure.
Yeah.
And because of things that had happened, I needed some way to make sense of things.
Sure. And at what
As
point in your life did you start coming up with all this stuff?
I don't know, I was probably like late
Oh,
teens,
wow. That's a lot of
early
wisdom for
20s.
that young.
I think I'd had some experience. I'd had too many experiences.
Yeah.
And at some point you decide, am I going to drink myself to death before I'm 30? Because and party myself. I like to think there are at least a couple of rock stars who are envious of the lifestyle that I was capable of leading. Like they're just, man, that guy. But you do realize that it's not the optimal way
So
to deal
you,
with these things.
before your late teens, then you were sexually abused, you experienced some bullying, and then you lost your mom. That's a lot. And then estranged
Yeah.
from your dad. Was that all before?
That was later, but he was
Okay.
dealing with all those things then. My mother actually died when I was 22, but she was first diagnosed when I was 11.
11
Um,
years is a long time
it's
to.
a long time. What I will credit her with is that what everybody needs somebody they can look to say in any given situation, they can say, that person made it, or that person showed me how to deal with this. And I think that was certainly, my mother had a tenacious, she was 4 foot 11, like soaking wet, maybe 101, 102 pounds, like a very tiny person. My father was 6 foot 4, like 235. I don't know
Oh,
how.
wow.
I'm not sure how I got here, honestly, but it was very, I don't like to think about it. But she was one of the most determined. She didn't do everything right, but she just had a passion for life.
Mm,
And she had an unbelievably determined spirit, just probably the most determined person. I've only met two people like her, and she was far the better of the two people.
oh,
But I think in her 11-year struggle, in her 11-year struggle with cancer that eventually took her life, she showed me how to live with that determination, that passion for life, that I want to breathe. And then, so what does that take? And she just did everything. And so when my time came, I had that as a model through these things to just say, I'm going to persist. And and so I think there's three things. There's the things you do to yourself, things that other people do to you, and then there's just the universe as a whole. Things just happen.
yeah.
My father used to like to refer, I think maybe it's from the book of Job, I think, but my father used to say when people would say, why do good things happen to bad people? And he would say,
Mm,
the rain falls on the just and the unjust. The universe just works. It works the way it
yeah.
does. Sometimes you're in the sunshine, sometimes you're in the rain. It has nothing to do with what kind of person you are. Doesn't mean you're good or bad. Now, you can make some bad decisions and bring trouble on yourself. Other people can make bad decisions, bring trouble on top of you. But sometimes then it's just like you're just in a desert. It
That's just
just,
so
it's gonna,
hard though, because it's so much easier. I think when I've had my struggles in life, I don't know, it's so much easier to be like, what did I do? What did I do to deserve this? What did I do in a past life? What did I do early? But it's true. Stuff just happens. Life just happens and it's not perfect. And we've got to figure out how to get through it. And it's not always something we did. It just isn't.
no, I think that's super important for
Mhm.
people to get a hold of. Look, I think we have to be ruthlessly, we have to inspect these things ruthlessly, in my opinion, to put them in one of those three categories. And in all of them, we have to just accept that what's happened has happened. And now how do we course correct or dig our way out of that thing? But I think where we can contribute, we should be ruthlessly transparent with ourselves and own the responsibility for what we can do. And that didn't come to me till much later in life. But at some point, you got to stop blaming everybody else because even when people do things to you, you don't know. It really, I think it's more rare than we would like to admit that people intentionally harm us.
I hope that's true. I would like to believe that too. And because, yeah, I don't think everybody's intentions are just awful all the time. I think,
I think people can be, what's the way to say it? They can have a lack of awareness. And I think a lot of times people are just trying to do for themselves without an awareness of the way they're doing it is going to impact us. And I
yeah,
don't think
and
that's necessarily malicious.
no,
That might be selfish. It
yeah.
might be, but
But
I don't think it is
also,
malicious.
as we're all going through our hard shit in life, because I believe everybody
Yeah.
has hard stuff
Yeah.
they're going through, like sometimes you just don't have the capacity for other people, also. Like if
100%.
you are drowning in whatever it is you're going through, that you just don't have the capacity. So, again, that's not malicious either. Like,
No, and we should be
you,
somewhat. I saw a guy flip somebody off the other day.
oh, jeez.
Now, I live in a state where concealed carry is allowable and under the right circumstances, defend yourself. It's which I think prompts people to not behave so badly because they never know who might.
Well,
And so,
yeah.
but this guy, this person, I couldn't see who was in the car in front of him. The car in front of him realized late that they needed to get in a left turn lane to turn onto the interstate. I don't know whether he was unaware or maybe he was rushing to get someplace. They needed a little bit of room. They had a little bit of room. They snuck in, and he just effing lost it, man. Just lost it. Just
Yeah.
they got in the left lane, so the car moved in front of him and then went into the turn lane. So he dives into the turn lane, and as they're turning on the interstate, he's shooting them the bird, and he's just like yelling to the window. And at first, I'm thinking, man, if I was the guy in the car in front of him, I would just pull over and we'd have to chat. Or maybe I'd let him pull up beside me and I just inform him that his behavior could be threatening and I'm armed. So let's don't go there. You think about these things. And then I thought, I wonder if he got fired today. Or I
Hmm.
wonder if he just found out about his girlfriend broke up with him or
Yeah.
some friend betrayed him or something. Like the
You
fact that you
don't
just
know.
don't know. You know?
Yeah.
And that guy who pulled in front of him just happened to do, which I looked at it and I was like, okay, it was a little narrow. Yeah, the guy had to tap his brakes. Was it the most safe thing? No. Safest thing? No. Either way you say it, it still wasn't.
Yeah.
But was it enough to go off like that? Nah, something else happened. Something else.
We just recently here in Colorado, I'm in Colorado Springs here in Colorado, and we just,
Beautiful area.
yes, thank you. I love living here. We just the other day had a road rage incident near my house where somebody got shot and died. So I don't know exactly what happened, and not to say that behavior is okay, but like you said, who knows what that person is struggling with too. Like, you just never know in any situation. Somebody is
Well,
struggling.
and in that, I think we can take that back down to like our things too, right? Like someone needs to de-escalate in that situation. Like one of my core beliefs is only be religious about religion. Be
Mhm.
religious about your religion, but don't be religious about the guy who pulled in front of you and cut you off. Okay, like
Mhm.
that. If you want to go on a crusade, I hear you. I just don't think you ought to do it in traffic with somebody who just really wasn't trying to hit you. They just
Yeah.
screwed up. They didn't look over the left shoulder
And we've all
or
been there
we've
too,
all,
right?
we've all
Like,
done it. Like even the guy chasing them down has done it. He probably did it
yeah.
yesterday. But I think it's difficult in that situation to tone it back and not let it go because there's a part of you that's you're threatening me. Now we gotta do something about it. I'm not gonna be intimidated. Like all these things start happening. But these things, but that same model happens in our daily life. Somebody says something to you, or there's just I was at the dog park the other day. This guy comes in, my wife and I are there. We go late to this dog park near us because our older dog, he's very territorial,
Mhm.
sweet dog, pack oriented, would die for anybody in the family. He's just a great dog, but he can't quite turn it off. So we don't take him to dog park with everybody else, right? So we go late. And then it turns out that when we get there, there's this other guy who's walking his dog in. And my wife and I just walk into, they have it split in half. So we walk into this one side where our dogs can be alone. And my wife says, "Hey, dude, are you coming in this side?" And he's just grumpy and just really rude. We even made a comment to each other about it. He takes his dog and goes in the other half, which is like the back half of this two-part dog park. It's 8 o'clock in the evening. Nobody's there but just us. And he's just grunting and won't speak and just not a pleasant fellow. And so his dog, there's like a water fountain in between the two halves. So I go over and I'm pushing the button so my dog can get some water, and his dog's on the other side. So I reach over, push the button so his dog can have some water. And because there's just like, I'm not going to hold it against the dog because the guy's an asshole.
Yeah.
And so and so he turned and he goes, "Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you." But yeah, not a problem. So I don't know what happened next, but I then saw like my wife was chatting with him and she's like, "Look, I think I've seen you here before. I think your dog likes being in this side." And he goes, "Yeah, actually, he's a little older. And so really the exercise he gets, and he's not a tremendously friendly dog, but like the exercise he gets is running up along the front fence when cars go by. So that's like his exercise for the
Okay.
day." And I was like, 'cause that's one place he can just run. I was like, so she's like, "Why don't we just get our dogs and go back? And then you bring your dog over here because my dogs really don't care which
Yeah.
half they're in." After 3 minutes of talking, what it really turned out was he was frustrated and really probably a little bit angry because all he wanted was for his dog to run that evening. That's
Mhm.
all he wanted in life. And it was like, I thought of it and I was like, man, I almost got really pissed off at this guy. And all he wanted was to take care of his dog. And once we worked it out, we ended up leaving. Then he wouldn't stop talking to us and he was so friendly. And I was like, so that was it. He cares about his dog. He
Mm.
wants his dog to have a little bit of enjoyment. And we got in the way of that.
Mm.
Not intentionally, but we got in the way. And
Sure.
I just thought it was like a lesson. And I'm not very good at this, by the way. It's easier said than done, you
Yeah,
know?
for sure. For sure.
But I think we all should have aspirational goals. So it is an aspirational goal to think for a minute, man, I wonder if that person is just having a shitty day.
Yeah.
And something
Yeah.
I heard a great saying the other day. It said, "Are you having a bad day, or is the day having a bad you?" And I thought his day was probably just having a bad him.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's a long way of saying I think we should probably just, I don't think everybody is out to get us, even though
Mhm.
at times it feels like it
Yeah.
because we're going through our stuff and it's just so much.
Yeah.
But we don't know what they're going through either.
Yeah. And
And
everybody's going through something at some point. So,
yeah, nobody gets out of this thing. Nobody
no.
gets out of this thing without scars. It just doesn't happen.
No, absolutely not. So you mentioned that your way of dealing with a lot of this stuff originally was drinking, partying, all that stuff. At what point or what happened, did anything happen to trigger you to be like, "Oh, yeah, this isn't good."
So what happened was all the like the smoking, cigarettes, weed, drinking, just excessively in what I thought was enjoying myself. And there
Mm.
were some enjoyable moments. That's the paradox of it. There are some enjoyable moments. That's so how hard do I have to work to get that back? I think probably when we had our first child, so I would say I was 30, and we ended up having four children, all over 2 years apart, except our youngest was 16 months separated from the first. Now we didn't have any family to help. By then, my mother obviously passed away. my wife's family, she was estranged from her parents and they had gotten divorced. There was a lot of stuff going on in there. And then eventually they passed away. So it was really, it really was just my wife and I. And so we had an agreement, or we did agree, that because of our childhoods, that if we had children, that she would stay home and that would be her job full time would be
Mhm.
homemaker and mother.
Yep.
And my job would be to provide. That's the way it was. Ever have any jobs, whatever it was, that was my job. And because we weren't, and so that was just our deal going into it. Historically, we hadn't, my parents had stayed together, but they worked full time. My father traveled 5 days a week. I saw him maybe, geez, what is that? I saw him less than 100 days a year,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
52 weeks, 18 hours, whatever it was, for years and years, like 15 years. And along that time, then like the partying and drinking, then like my focus rotated from what I thought was I'd gotten all my stuff put away. I'd like, I've had it in its box. It was done. Move
Mhm.
on to the next thing. So my focus became the family
Yeah.
and providing. And then at some point along the way, 4 children, at one point 5 and under, just my
Wow.
wife and I. And when you go through that, you end up going to marriage counseling because just the load is a lot to carry, right? There's not a lot of time for, oh, let's talk. There's not a
Yeah.
lot of time for that. And somewhere along the way, to get a little bit of a break from it, when my children got old enough that like my older daughters could watch the boys or everybody got old enough where we could go out a little bit. It's there, so you need to start doing like some date nights and stuff. And I think the pressure of everything, date nights turned into going and having a cocktail and then another cocktail, and then the pressure was there was a lot of pressure to provide and deliver, and
Sure.
my wife was under pressure, and we had always enjoyed partying before, so it was
Hmm.
almost like putting on a comfortable pair of shoes.
Yeah.
And so then it started up again. And so somewhere later, probably the pancreatic cancer, because I
Mm.
got that at 53. I was diagnosed at 53.
Wow.
That's when you're like, okay, got to stop everything unhealthy. If I'm going to have a shot, got to stop everything unhealthy. So that's when it was kind of like there was a period of time where no partying. But then if that's the way you learn to deal with stress and pressure,
Yeah.
when the
Which I
stress and
think a lot
pressure,
of people do, right? We all use the
yeah,
excuse of, oh man, I had a stressful day at work. I'm going to come home and have a glass of wine or have a beer or have a cocktail or whatever.
yeah. And I was never like a blackout drunk, or I never felt like I was addicted to it. And it wasn't. I think it was just, it was I realized later it was situational. And that was part of, I think it serves one better. And this is not like oh, it just happened one day. One of my beliefs is that no one outruns the universe. The
Mhm.
universe will catch up. It sets parameters, and
Yeah.
first it tries to nudge you, like with guardrails, and then you just run through the guardrails. But eventually you hit like the barrier of the universe, and it's just, yeah, that's not the way you're going to do it, right? It explains it in more forceful tones,
Yep.
what not to do, that you're on the wrong path. And to me, that was pancreatic cancer was like that thing that I was
Mm.
trying to outrun the universe, right? I was trying to do it all. I was trying to, and I thought all this stuff from my past and was all put in a box. I think it was just put in my pancreas. I think that was the box I put it in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I do. I actually do. I was going through like a hypnotherapy just like last year, a couple years ago, and it was like this kind of like super relaxed EMDR approach, and the therapist asked me like where did I feel it at? And when I moved my hands around, like my hands went right to my pancreas, like right over my pancreas. And like we stopped and it's like, that's strange. So yeah, I think if you align it to chakras, then those organs and that kind of solar plexus area is where a lot of worry and anxiety gets stuck. And so I think that was kind of like, hey, you're not going to outrun this. You're going to have to confront it. And I think that's at whatever moment that is, I think we serve ourselves better to confront what is there and deal with both what others have done to us, what is just in the natural order of the universe that has happened, and then those things that at least we have contributed to. We may not have caused it, but we contributed to this thing occurring. And so I think that was the beginning of my turnaround. That was the thing where it was okay. And then when after my son passed away,
Mm.
I say my son, my wife and our son passed, our youngest child passed away. I ended up hearing about this EMDR type therapy, and I thought if it can lessen this emotional despair, then that might be helpful. And but they never stop with what you go to them with. Like when you start the MDR process, like it starts unraveling.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized I never actually had any of those things dealt with. I wish somebody had told me when I was 30, go through this process. Don't just go to therapy and talk about it. Go do like some hard work on it.
Yeah.
It might have saved me a lot of trouble later in life.
It's so frustrating because I've found myself at times, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm dealing with this, I'm going through it, I'm doing the things. And then I feel like it's always, the hindsight's always 2020 after the fact. I'm like, oh no, I was just in survival mode. I wasn't actually dealing with what was happening and the feelings and the emotions and all that stuff until later. But in the moment, I totally thought I was.
Oh, yeah. And it very well may be that in that survival mode, you are. It's like going back to your ancestors. They didn't have any time for this. They were just trying to figure out, will we eat this week? Not today. This
Mhm.
week, will we have something? So I think my wife and I have talked about this a lot because there's a lot of things that one can look back on and say, I wish I'd done that differently, or I would have done that differently. One of the things that my son's passing, I think, has taught us, and you still go through the cycle before you get to the place of remembering how you're supposed to look at the problem. But I was going through the therapy after my son's passing with the therapist that was doing the EMDR. And I said something, I don't know, it's like 2 or 3 sessions in a row. I kept talking about things that if only this had happened, then he wouldn't have taken his life. If only this had happened, maybe if I had done this, if I didn't blame anybody else. And I do ultimately hold the person who takes their own life responsible for that decision. People who say they're not mentally stable, they're not the, but I think I was saying something about what if I had done this differently, then he wouldn't be dead.
Mm.
And the therapist was like, why is it every time you say what you would have done differently, the only outcome is a more positive outcome? And I said, because it would have been. It would have been positive had I done this, or if we had known about that. Like ketamine wasn't a thing at the time, and he had major depression. And today there would be things like maybe legally get him into a trial with psychedelics or help
Yeah.
him with ketamine or do something. There would be
Yeah.
some things that we would think of differently today than we
Yeah.
did even 4 years ago, right? That
Yeah.
wasn't a super ketamine was just coming out and that kind of stuff. And I've talked to people whose children had suicidal ideations, and while it doesn't work for all, that ketamine has helped a number of them get to deal with that, and it's saved their lives. But I would say these things. She said, why do you think it would have worked out better? And I said, because if this had happened, then that would have happened, and
Mhm.
this, he wouldn't have killed himself. And
Mhm.
she goes, okay, what if you had done that? And then she listed off some things that could have gone worse. She's
Mhm.
like, he was major depression. What if you had done that thing, whatever it was that I'd said? I can't remember what it was, but she
Yeah.
goes, what if you had done that and he had attempted suicide and had failed, and now he was a paraplegic or a vegetable or in a coma for the duration? That wouldn't have worked out. And you'd hate to say better than, but that is not a positive outcome, is what she was trying to say.
Yeah.
Okay, not like one would be better or worse, but there's an outcome that's not positive, and everything you're thinking about is positive. So what if you had done this other thing, and then what if he had decided to take someone else's life before he took his own? What
Ooh.
if she went through it and I was like, geez, you can stop. Or what she was working to explain to me was, and I did get it in the moment. I still lose track of it, but at least now I know it so I can come back to it. Is that, look, we are where we are, and we don't actually know if anything we had done differently would have led to anything more positive than the situation that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And that was a super hard concept for me to come to terms with. And there's still days when I struggle with it.
Sure.
But I think broadly, it's probably, it's more accurate than not.
Yeah,
You
we
know?
don't know. We don't know how that would have turned out. We can make up that story in our head, like you said, that if I'd have done this, then it wouldn't have happened. But we don't, yeah, you don't really know
Well,
what would have happened if you would have changed those things.
you don't. And like you talk about being in survival mode, I was in my mind, I was in, and I think I grew up this way. I still struggle with this whole cortisol level being in like fight or flight mode all the
Mm.
time. And I know it's just the things that have happened, like your system gets stuck there. I didn't realize that until much, much later in life. But I could say during those years before you had pancreatic cancer, maybe you should have never had a cocktail, should have never drank, should have never gone to concerts and like I mean, but it was like a way out from under the pressure. And
Yeah.
so I could say I would have done all those things differently, but how do I know that then something wouldn't have happened? I would have snapped. My wife and I would have gotten a divorce. Everything could.
Yeah.
So I'm not justifying bad behavior. I'm just saying, what good does it do now to go back and think about what all could have been or should have been? It just is. We are where we are. We don't actually know if
Yeah.
we would have made anything better. We could have made things a lot worse.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would just encourage people that have either been through very difficult times or or they've had something like the loss of a child, or they look back and they think whatever that situation is, that job loss, that the loss of a romantic interest, whatever it is, look, are there things that you could look forward and say, going forward, I would behave differently? I think that's a useful way to look at things.
Yeah. That you have a little bit more control over. You still don't know what's going to happen, but you can make those changes now. You don't
You
have to
can at
make
least
those changes.
test it the next time
Yeah.
and say, well, what if I don't
Yeah.
punch that guy in the face? If that would make things better for me, like then I wouldn't go to jail for that. Or I wouldn't just get frustrated and yell at my wife about something. Maybe the day would go better. Maybe next time I won't do that. Okay. I guess what I'm saying is it's like, how much time can you spend in the past? The more time you spend in the past, the greater grip it holds on you. And then your energy and your thought and your focus gets turned to the past. And then I think that's how people get stuck. That's one of the ways people get
Mhm.
stuck. So I think what this therapist helped me see was don't get stuck there. It is what it is. If you think there's something you would do differently, then do it the next time.
Yeah. How long ago did you lose your son?
4 years ago, this June is
Oh,
4 years
that's
ago. Yeah, beginning of June.
very recent. That's
Yeah,
not
it
that long
is.
ago.
Yeah, and it's not good though. I would like to think 4 years is some decent span of time, but then I heard the Robert Plant, lead singer for Led Zeppelin. I didn't know this about him, but I guess 42 years ago, he lost a 7-year-old child. And he said that he and the child's mother were just, I saw him in an interview. So this is probably last year, but I just recently saw the interview. And he's got tears about it. And when he's talking about it, it's been 42 years. And he goes, we were just talking the other day, and we were just both tremendously sad about like he would be 49 now or whatever it was. And I
Wow.
was like, damn, that sucks because I'm only at 4. So this is going to go on forever. And
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I've talked to a lot of people over my lifetime, and I feel like that has got to be losing a child at any age, regardless, losing your child before you go is never the way it's supposed to be. And I just can't even imagine the heartbreak that goes into that. It's just absolutely got to be devastating.
yeah, and I think I had seen an aunt and one of my aunt and uncles lose a child. He was my dearest, closest, really my closest friend. We're almost like brothers. We were born 30 days apart, and he died at 12. Just a freak thing. Nobody knew back then if you gave children with high fevers aspirin that it would turn into Rye syndrome and shut their organs down. Nobody knew that. And this was like the late 70s or late 70s, something like that, early 80s. I can't remember. Anyway, late 70s. And it really there was a lot of trouble in their marriage before that happened. But those kinds of losses, the pressure from that will find every weak spot in you and your relationships. It will
Mm.
just find every weakness, man. And you got to work so hard not to get into a blame game or so. Just in a moment, like in a moment, you say something that you shouldn't. And so I'd seen what had happened to them, and so I didn't want that to happen. So we put a lot of focus on His choice was not our choice. And I've talked to parents who have lost children to cancer, which I've dealt with our son's suicide, but I don't know how I would deal with losing a child like for what appears to be no reason. And there's no, who do you blame? At least I can blame my son. If I get pissed off one day, I can just go, you made this decision. You shouldn't have made that decision. But what do you say to somebody who just, like a child that passes away from an illness? Who do you blame?
And I feel
Um,
like probably if anybody lost a child in the early years, like you were talking about Robert Plant, it was probably either an illness or a tragic accident
it
or
was an
something like
accident. I don't
that.
remember the accident, but it was an accident. But it was one that would, no, I don't know if did he get, was it an illness? I'd have to look it up now. But the point of it was there wasn't really someone to blame. There wasn't like a
Right.
person that you couldn't say that drunk driver did this, and it's like that didn't happen. So there was nobody to hold. There was nobody to be angry at to later forgive. And that strikes me as something that would be unbearable.
Yeah.
But I think you go through these things. I saw a visual one time, and I think it's helped me with both the passing of my son and then retrospectively to look at some other situations. And it showed like one frame was this emptiness. It was just this black inside this frame. And the picture represented like the hole in your heart
Mm.
when this thing, whatever that thing is, when this loss happens, right? This terrible thing occurs. And it was describing that it's 100% of the picture of that frame. 100% of that was just black. Then it showed another frame. This frame was much, much larger.
Okay.
The size of the what represented like the hole in your heart, right? That part that was missing of you now was the exact same size in the second visual as it was in the first visual. Now,
Okay.
one of my least favorite sayings is time heals all wounds. I know for a fact that's not true. Like it doesn't actually heal all wounds. The impact can become less over time. But I think this visual helped me see why that is. And so what the visual did was it didn't take away, it didn't be like, oh, like this pain will get smaller, this loss will get smaller. So the visual was no, it'll be the exact same size. But if you continue to make your life's experiences larger,
Mm.
then the frame of your life gets bigger. And so as a percentage of your life, this loss will be smaller.
Yeah.
But if you compare it to the day, day to day, year over decade, whatever, it's the exact same size, but it became a smaller percentage. And I was like, okay,
I love
that I
that.
can work with. Yeah,
Yeah.
that I can work with. So I didn't have to feel like I was like leaving something behind and or that why does it still hurt this bad? And that picture was like hurts that bad because it hurts that bad.
Yeah.
The loss hasn't gotten smaller. It's just that
Right.
maybe you won't think about it. You'll have other things that occupy you and you'll go on. And then I thought, I saw people that were in suicide groups or groups for parents of children that, whether, and you'd see, to your point earlier, you'd see parents that were, their child committed suicide or took their life at 30 and their
Mhm.
child took their life at, my child was 18, but some were like 15, 14. I'd heard of some at 8. Unbelievable. There wasn't really a difference in that law. Like whether it was at 30 or whether it was at 15, like they were just completely devastated. To your point, it doesn't really matter like when that occurs. They're just not supposed to happen before you. That's when it's not supposed to happen is before you, you know?
Yeah.
And but I thought, man, I think what people do, I think what we all have a tendency to do, and I don't think this just applies to like the loss of life. It can be the loss of a job. It can be the
Mhm.
loss of a romantic relationship. Whatever the loss is, for me in my childhood, it was loss of innocence, right? It was whatever that loss is. I think maybe by design, but it's almost there's a part of us that feels like we will betray that experience if we continue to move forward in life. And so we
Mm.
don't want to leave that behind. I don't want to forget my son. I don't want to leave him behind. And
Yeah.
I've talked to other people who say the same thing. And then sometimes you see people with just a job loss and they always consider themselves like an employee of that company or they lost a business and they're like, I'm still that person.
Yeah.
And I thought, maybe the better way to do it, and I had this conversation with my wife, and then we started working to practice this because you go through these cycles where you just got to go through the cycle, and then you remind yourself, hey, there's okay, time to stop doing that. Let's get back to what we know we should be doing. And one of those things was we decided that we would not stay with him in that moment. We would work to make our picture frame larger and we would carry him with us. So there's no way we're going to forget him. It just takes a while to mentally get to a place where I'll never forget him. I will always remember the day he died, the day he was born, the things in life. But that was like a huge mental hurdle to get over was that like I was just, and I saw it in other people. I think sometimes we're just drawn to stay there because we don't want to leave them behind. We don't want to leave whatever that loss is behind.
Yeah.
And one of the things I learned was it is not betrayal
Mm,
to not live in that loss, but to bring that loss with you and
mm,
have it as just one part of the experience of your life. And over time, if you persevere enough over time, it will become one part of your life, a significant, no less painful part, but it won't be your entire life.
mm.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah. Yeah. That's hard though. And yeah.
yeah, nothing we will talk about is easy. So we should have
No.
stipulated in the beginning, right? Yeah, all of
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
aspirational. It's super hard. We fail at it every day. And that's really what the beliefs are.
Yeah.
They're those things that I know I'm going to fail at doing it. So I have them to remind me to course correct. So like I go through that whole cycle. My wife and I saw something the other day that just reminded us of our son. And we both just we're in the car and we
Mm,
started crying. And so you got to, but we know now that you just got to go through that. You got to go
mm.
through the cycle. I can't believe this happened. Why did it happen? Man, I'm pissed off. And then you get to, and there's still nothing I can do about it. Like it just
That
is what it
spiral
is.
can be bad.
100%.
Because that's when you end up spiraling down in all of those types of questions of questioning what happened, why it happened, why me, why this, why whatever, what did I do, all that stuff. And sometimes I actually had one experience. I guess it wasn't that long ago, but where I did that spiral and it took me like 2 weeks to pull myself out of that. And
Yeah,
I think sometimes people don't pull themselves out of it. And that's how you end up overdoing alcohol and overdoing that kind of stuff
100%.
because you've got to still try to survive. And it's so hard when
It
you're
is.
down that road.
But the idea is set aside the time frame. You at some point you have to you have to decide
Yeah.
that okay, enough is enough. And that's what these meta phrases do for me, right? Whether I go through it for 5 minutes, 30 seconds, or 2 weeks, at some point they just always come back to me
Yeah.
and remind me, hey, you need to think about this differently. It's not helping you right now. And
Yeah.
you talk about spiraling. After my son's passing, my wife was on the verge of taking her life. She didn't want to live. And I think I'm not comparing one to the other, but I knew when this happened, I'd seen what happened to my aunt when she lost her child. And my grandmother had lost a child when he was under a year old. And she had told me stories about how when she lost that child, it was her sixth child. And I guess that back then it was always like, if you're going to lose one or two, if you could get out with just lose, you know what, because that was like in the 1930s, right? So it wasn't the same standard we'd have today. And but she told me back then, you collect all these little pieces of information, and you have to be willing when the shit hits the fan, you got to be willing to work yourself back to remembering these things so they can help you dig out. So my grandmother shared with me that when she lost her son, and she still called him David, and it had been like, I don't know, like 60 years since then. She talked about him like he was still here. And she said when that happened, she woke up like it happened. She went to sleep, and when she woke up, everything was what we would call grayscale today. It was just, she would say it was black and white. Everything was just, it was a shade of gray. There was literally no color. She could look at the sky, she saw no color. She could look at the grass, she saw no color. Everything went away. Now, for her, she's a very religious woman, but she really struggled through that with her religious beliefs. Just She was disciplined in her way, the way some people are disciplined about meditation or mindfulness approaches or whatever. She was disciplined in reading her Bible and praying, even when she didn't want to. She was
Yeah.
like pissed off at God, and this is just not. But and she had my grandfather was a terrible alcoholic and violent guy, so she had a lot of shit going on.
Yeah.
Okay, but she said, Randy, at some point, and she didn't remember the exact point, but at some point, she said, I woke up one morning, I'd been praying, like because she goes, I really just wanted to end. I wanted it to end, but it didn't end. The gray ended. She woke up one morning and she could see color again. And she didn't know the moment it happened. Like she just remembered, she knew that she had woken up, and when she looked outside, she could see color and she could hear the birds chirping. And she thought, okay, I'm not going to die from this. So this, I can see color again, so I must be coming back. And so I'd seen what happened to my aunt when her child died. I had a feeling my wife wouldn't put it in these terms, but it's okay. So really bad situation. Maybe the world is gray. Because the mother carries the child, right? Like this was her youngest child. She had carried him, she
Yeah.
had fed him, they had a little extra time to spend together because the ones that are a little bit older are doing things. And we had known for years that he suffered with depression and that he had thought about taking his own life many times. And he had a promise to her that he would never do that without talking to her first. Like and we were open about these things. Like we knew it was a challenge. We knew it might happen. You can't get prepared for it no matter how much.
Yeah.
And so that was like, not only did she lose her youngest child, but he had violated their trust. She never went to him. He never went to her. He just decided that was it. And I just had this strange feeling one day. I can't remember what she was doing, but I called her and she told me later she wasn't going to answer, but she did. And she had decided that day to end her life.
Oh,
She didn't want to live. She didn't want to live anymore. Just the pain was too much.
yeah.
And I talked to her, and our family physician, who knew all the children, he was devastated from Heston's actions. And he had told us, look, there's a much higher percentage of people who take their life that are associated with people who take their life. So you got to call me. If anything goes sideways, you got to call me. So I had his cell phone number, and I said, listen, just drive to his office. She said, I don't have appointments. I said, just drive to his office. I messaged him. He set other patients aside, got her in.
Mm.
Yeah, that would have been a terrible outcome,
Terrible.
considering, yeah. But I guess my point is that you go through these cycles, and in that case, she had to make the decision to stay, but we were able to put like the encouragement and path around her to give her the chance to say yes to it.
Mhm.
And I think we have to remember these things that we have learned, that we have seen in other people. That's why I write these phrases down to remind myself about them. And I think, God, I don't even know how we got off on that topic now. I'm trying to tie it back together. And it always kind of gets me a little sideways thinking about that.
Sure.
But the point is, we always have to, I think it's helpful to remember that we're not the first ones to go through something, to have examples of people who have gone through things and survived. Like with my grandmother and my aunt, my mother, who passed away from cancer, we're all going to die. I don't know if you thought about it this way, Tony, but the number one cause of death since man's existence, it's not cardiovascular disease, it's not cancer, it's birth. Birth is the number one cause. We're all going to die. You're
Mhm.
born, you're going to die. Now it's a matter of timing and what you do with that time.
Yeah.
And I think so. It's helpful. That's what I want this story to be of my life for other people. At some point, that kind of became, there's got to be, I don't know what the purpose is, but there's got to be something. There was a few people along the way that encouraged me and they kept me going. They couldn't make the decision for me. I had to make the decision to keep going,
Yeah.
but they gave me the encouragement and kind of direction. And so that's what I hope that kind of talking through these subjects will do for someone today, is to think, wow, there are people, they don't know my pain, but they
Mhm.
have been through painful, desperate times, and they're still here. So maybe there is a way. And I would submit there is a way, and that you certainly should not give up.
It feels so lonely though sometimes when you're going through that stuff and you feel, and because like you just said, like everybody's experience is different.
Yeah.
experience with cancer, your experience with losing a child is going to be different than someone else's cancer journey and losing a child journey. And I think we can talk ourselves in those moments into thinking like, nope, no one understands what I'm going through. And that's true. Nobody knows the exact experience, but also, like you said, people have hard stuff they're going through. And I do think it's comforting to know that there are people out there that are also experiencing it and also feeling the same feelings, because I find myself berating myself sometimes. I know I shouldn't feel that way, so I need to stop feeling that way. I think I was thinking while you were talking about, I think one of the things we don't talk about with grief and losing someone in our lives is the anger behind some of that. Being
Oof.
angry with the person, because we lost my grandpa last year and he was 84 years old. He lived a long life and it was just time, unfortunately. But my mom has talked to me a little bit about how angry she's been at him leaving. My grandma had really bad dementia and leaving her with all of that and their money problems and all these things. But she felt ashamed of that anger too. And I imagine in a suicide situation, I imagine there's anger with that person there too. And I think that's something that we maybe need to normalize a little bit more than, because everyone's feeling it, but no one wants to talk about it because they're ashamed about it. So,
I think that is a really, that's an excellent point to bring out and talk about because I believe you are 100% correct. Like there's not like a 1% on either end where it's incorrect. It's just like you're correct. The whether it's and maybe it is shame. I shouldn't feel that way. I just think we have to. My experience has been it's what we do with that and how long we allow it to stay with us. At some point, I decided not to be angry with my son, but it does come out. I remember, like,
sure.
I got my wife this dog. She wanted this dog. It was got right after my son. And one of our dogs was getting older, so we knew he wasn't going to be around very long. And she wanted, it was like a healing dog. He's like a healing dog. And he's the half brother of our older dog.
Oh.
But he's just got like completely separate personality. My older dog is like the STEM student, and my younger dog is like the jock. Like just everything's just good, man. We're just gonna go
Yeah.
party, have a great time. Let's run the ball a little bit.
Yeah.
But when we moved into this new house, I just wasn't thinking. I left the gate open, and he was a puppy, and he bolted.
Hmm.
And we live not too far from a main road. It's only 2 lanes, but the speed limit's like 45. So people drive 55. It's a long story. Anyway, he gets across the road. We lose him. We can't find him. My wife and I are supposed to go on our first 3 or 4 day getaway since my son's passing. So it's like we're gonna, and the dog's gone, and she is just in shambles. This was the dog that was supposed to help her get past. So I'm in my Jeep. I'm off. We live in a kind of a growing populated area, but there's still a lot of woods around
Mhm.
and forest timberland. And so I'm driving over where I think the dog is, and I finally stop. I'm frustrated. I don't know what I'm going to do now because I can't find this dog. The dog he's too young to know any better. A snake will probably bite him and kill him. But and then my wife is just completely desperate over, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I sat down in the truck and Heston and I, that's my son's name, Heston is his name. And he and I had a chat. He and I had a chat. And that's where a little bit of my anger may have come out. Like I just had to get it out. And I had to explain to him that he had caused this problem. No one was going to take responsibility for it. This was on him. And he needed to get his ass down here and find that damn dog. Because
Mm.
I had enough to deal with. And I just kind of verbalized the whole thing. Just got
Yeah.
out. You promised your mother you would talk to her. Now she's got to live with that. You didn't. I don't care what your reasons are. I don't hate you for it. I've forgiven you for it. But damn it, you're not going to let this dog die. You understand? You're going to find this dog. And I won't tell you the series of events that happened, but about an hour later, the dog was in the back of my Jeep and
Mm.
somebody had found him. Now, some people say coincidence. Either way, I was able to verbalize some of my anger with Heston, whether he
Yeah.
heard it or not. And
Mm.
so I would just say, I think, look, unless you want to have some really terrible cancer, I would say we should probably there's nothing wrong with being angry about the situation.
Mhm.
I think what happens is when we internalize that anger and hang on to it,
Yes.
and then we don't deal with it. But there's nothing wrong in the moment with being pissed off because your grandfather didn't take care of business because and left everything to take care of. Now, he may have had very good reasons. He may have just been
Sure.
exhausted himself from taking care of your grandmother, and there was only so many things he could keep up. We might have, but I don't think that, I think the shame in it comes into hanging on to it.
Mm.
That to me is where there should be a separation from I'm disappointed, I'm angry, I'm hurt. There's all these things. Because if you don't get those, if you don't confront those feelings,
Yeah.
then you're just they're going someplace into the cells of your body, into your organs, like they're going
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
So you might as well at least get them out. And I don't think there's any shame in that. I think the shame is in actually hanging on to it
Yeah.
because then shame, those emotions, especially anger, but any of it, I think is like when that gets inside of us, when people say forgiveness,
Mm.
you need to forgive. Or people say, Jesus said, forgive 7 times 70. Okay, that's all. That's great. But nobody really tells you like how to forgive. Like,
Oh, yes. Mm.
so I'm going through EMDR and I thought I had forgiven the men who had molested me when I was a child. And, but I realized going through EMDR, I had not really dealt with it. And then I was like, how people say you need to forgive people. And they'll say, but the forgiveness is for you, not them. And you're like, okay, I tried. Like I thought I had, but obviously I
Way easier
haven't.
said than done.
Way easier. And
Yeah.
even if you think you have, you really, like, I don't
Yeah.
know. And so like in my case, I think I actually hadn't. Like I had told myself I had, but I really hadn't.
And
No.
do you think too that like with forgiveness, I think we think sometimes that we're excusing that behavior by forgiving them.
Oh, 100%. That's a
Right.
huge hurdle for people, right? But so this is what see if I can get this out in a way that makes sense. Because like when it happened to me, it's one of those things that makes like purpose. There's a little gem to hang on to,
Yeah.
but I don't know if I can explain it well enough. So look, I'm going through EMDR and we're dealing with the sexual abuse part. And after that, for some reason, at some point, I realized that I no longer had the anger, like I had forgiven the
Mm.
men who had done that to me. I didn't excuse anything for them. I didn't like it. If they were to be judicially punished for that behavior, I would not, I'm not one of those people that's, I've forgiven him, so let's not send him to prison. I'm like, I've forgiven him, send him to prison. But the question, there's a demarcation there where it's like punishment for the action. So I'm not excusing the action, and I'm not, I think people mistake like forgiveness with the alleviation of punishment for an action,
Mm.
right? So the punishment stays for the action. I even think God works it out. So, hey, I forgave you. Shit got messed up, and there's going to be some consequences. Okay, I don't know what to tell you. But I think I realized going through EMDR, I was like, how did I do? Like, how did I get to a place? So what I think I realized was it's really hard to forgive somebody. If you think about somebody, I don't know, like in a physical violent act, whatever that act is that you would imagine, if somebody does that to you and you said, I forgive you for that act, and then they do it again, and then they keep doing it, and the emotion of that thing that they've done to you is still inside you, then I think you can't, I don't know how you can forgive with the emotion of what happened to you still clinging to you, like on your back, on your shoulders, inside your chest, like wherever it's at. And so I think what forgiveness is, I think when the emotion is removed, like the anger, the pain, which for me, like going through EMDR was a way to separate the emotion from the memory of those events. So as long as I would say I'd forgiven somebody, but every time I remembered them, the emotion, the pain, and the anger would
Yeah.
like immediately rush back. And so I think what I saw was when I separated the memory from the emotion, and I could think back to the event without that just unbelievable amount of anger and everything, pain and self-loathing, like all this stuff that comes from that stuff.
Yeah.
Without that, it's like forgiveness. There was no trying for it, it just happened.
Mm.
And so I was like, is that how it's done? Is that no one ever explained that that what you're really doing with forgiveness, and the reason they say it's for you, not the other person, is because what you're doing is you're displacing those negative emotions with a positive emotion of forgiveness. So it's not like a thing that you say, it's a process of removing the negative emotions, separating those from you so they're not still hanging on and reminding you. So every time you think about that thing, how can you forgive if every time you think about it, the emotion comes back and you're angry again? You'd have to keep forgiving every time. And then, so I think what I saw was it's better to deal with not what they did to you, but what was left inside you from that thing they did to you.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a space and it's occupied by something.
Yeah.
And it can't have like truth, it can't have forgiveness and it can't have the positive and negative emotion at the same time.
Yeah.
So like you can't just overwash it with this forgiveness. Like you have to do something to
And
empty that box.
I think like you're just talking about healing. Heal it,
Yeah,
heal that wound, and then you can do the forgiving part of it.
right,
When you've
exactly.
done the forgiving part of it. Yeah.
And like all this time, people would be like, you need to forgive this person for this or for that. And I'm like, I did. And I was just like, maybe I never did
Mhm.
because I couldn't, like, that box didn't have enough room for anything except
Yeah.
the anger. Yeah.
That's
And so I
really
think that was one of the things that EMDR helped me with. And I'm not saying it helps everybody the same way. Like, I'm not being prescriptive. I'm just saying that was a technique that helped me
yeah.
inadvertently deal with some of the forgiveness pieces to some of these things, whether it was my son or one of my idiot oncologists who didn't know his work, or whether it was
Yeah.
other people, like these different situations. I
Yeah.
thought, man, is that it? Like, in my case for EMDR, like it helped separate the emotion from the event.
Interesting.
And then I could think of the event without the anger.
Hmm.
And then it was almost like forgiveness just happened. It was very strange, but no, I don't. I know that people think, I did too, even subconsciously, that my anger is what is exacting a toll on those people for what they did to me. But I don't think that works. I don't think they know. I don't think they even care. They haven't thought about it. Maybe they haven't, but it's really just the anger is just mine. But anyway, I just think that's one lesson I learned was like, for me, it was like, so if you want to live in a state, maybe it's this. It's forgiveness isn't a thing. Maybe it's living in a state of forgiveness. And you can't do that where you're living in a state of anger.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
like
Okay.
that.
That's just like one of those things. I'm trying to think
Yeah.
how to,
I like
but
that
it
we
was,
just like processed that together.
yeah, it just also like that. Yeah, I think, and maybe somebody that's listening is really struggling with that. And I think, like what you said before, I have a guy that he's super intelligent, just a wonderful human being. So I won't say he works for me. We work together. He happens organizationally to report to me, but we work together. I learn more from him than he does from me. And he lost his wife. They've been married 35 years. My wife and I are coming up on our 37th anniversary.
Mm.
And he was devastated, obviously. She had fought cancer for 9 years, I think. Very similar to like my mother's path, get diagnosis. My mother made it to remission twice, was on the verge of getting her stamp of remission. Like she had to make it 5 years. And she made it 4.5 years both times before. So it was like these big ups and then these huge letdowns. And his wife had been through a lot of those things. And we talked afterwards. And I think one of the ways that we were able to talk about it was, I'm going to tie this back to something you said, I
Yeah,
promise,
you're good.
was that I made sure to tell him, and he communicated with me. And I don't know how we got on that wavelength, but we had talked about all the, I know one of the things we said was people will say, and it goes to this malicious thing we were talking about in the beginning, they will say things that are just like, they would just piss me off when they say, I'm like, that's the stupidest damn thing I've ever heard. Don't ever say that. But they didn't mean it maliciously. They just didn't know what to say at that moment. It's kind of like, you'll get over this. No, I'm not going to go as far as to say MFer on your show, but no, I won't. Okay. No, I won't.
I
Okay.
mean, if it requires that sentiment,
Yeah.
go for it.
But the sentiment is there. No,
Yeah.
I will not. Or somebody would say, like, time will heal all. No, that's not the thing to say to me right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we talked about some of those things that people would say. So one of the things I worked on was to never say those things. He
Mhm.
asked, like, right afterwards, he's like, how long? How long will it be like this? And I was like, a long time. A long time.
Mhm.
Will it get better? Probably not. But that was one of the things I was like, so there was these two picture frames, and I would tell him that,
Yeah, yeah.
because and I was like, whatever you do, you have to keep doing some things to expand the picture. You're not going to want to You're going to hate it. Everything you do, you're going to remember the person you lost, and then you're going to feel guilty, and we would just talk about those things. So to your point earlier, I haven't lost my spouse. I'm thankful for that. Okay.
Yes.
And I've also learned over the time, never say things can't be worse. Just accept how bad they are, but never think that they can't get worse because they
Yeah.
can. We had experienced loss, and they weren't the same loss, but at a little bit higher level, we were still grieving. We were still feeling the anger. And we would talk about how, as much as he loved her, he was angry that she had left him. Like he wanted her here. And he would say, well, we talked about it. I said, no, you shouldn't feel guilty. You can be glad that she's no longer in that pain and still be angry that this has happened. You can do those things. You just can't stay there.
Yeah.
And so I think that also helps our resilience getting through things because we do come across people who have had similar yet different experiences. Don't discount them just because they're different. He
Yeah.
lost his spouse, we lost our child. At another level, we're still going through those stages of grief and it's nonlinear and we're bouncing around and you're like, oh man, I just saw somebody at the convenience store, the gas station that from the back looked like my son. He saw somebody someplace that from the
Mm.
walking away looked like his wife. Those experiences are still universal. And so I would just encourage people, don't get into a place where you're like, nobody knows. Nobody knows. Nobody can understand. You know what? You're right. Nobody can comprehend your situation. There's
Yeah.
a difference between understanding and comprehending. I
Yes.
understand what it's like to lose someone that you love before their time. I understand what it's like to lose someone at their time. When my grandfather, my grandparents passed away, yes, they were older, but there's still a significant loss there. And so I can understand the loss and still share some experiences or some things that I've been through that might be valuable to you because I've been through it already
Yeah.
without you thinking because I can't comprehend your specific loss that all my experiences are irrelevant. I think by doing that, what we do is we cut ourselves off from things that might help us.
Yeah.
And this person and I spent a lot of time. We'd be on the phone sometimes 2, 3 hours after work in the evening. I would call to check on him or something and we would just start talking. And I know what it's like to be in despair. So
Yeah.
despair is kind of like we could at least talk about despair. And I think through some of the things that we talked about, he was able to, not too long after, with one of his older children, take a trip. And they went to Central America and went surfing. But that all of a sudden, he was expanding his picture frame. And we still talk about it. I think it's been over 2 years now and for his loss. And I think he's working his way to getting rid of some of her stuff, putting it away, moving it out. And he asked me, he goes, Andy, I've talked to people in the grief group and they've just done it so much faster. And I was like, brother, compete only with yourself. Are you making any headway today? Are you a little bit better today than you were yesterday? Or even yesterday, maybe you were better and today you're not as good as you were yesterday. Are you better than you were 6 months ago? Are you
Yeah.
better than you were 3 months ago? And can you keep her stuff in the house forever? I don't think that's the best thing to do. Is 2 years too long to work your way? You've dealt with some of it and like it's taken you longer. I still got stuff in a storage locker from my son. I just went through it 3 or 4 months ago and got rid of a bunch of stuff that was like the last of the stuff and then I decided what I was going to probably keep until I die. And so I just think don't cut yourself off from other people. One, just because they say something that to you sounds really stupid because they don't know what to say. They really don't know what
Yeah.
to say. And the other thing is don't discount someone who might have a kernel of wisdom or a nugget of helpfulness just because they haven't been through exactly what you've been through.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was too far down that rabbit hole,
No,
but
I love that. That's so I've been through infertility and the amount
uh,
of things that people say to me, it's just absolutely mind-boggling. And I've had to deal with that for so
right.
many years. And I'm just always, God, and I'm a hairdresser and I recently moved salons and So now I'm like rebuilding my clientele and I have all these new people that always want to
You got to
ask.
tell the story again.
Yes. And they're like, and I know it's coming because the
Yeah.
standard question is, do you have kids? And I've tried to just say no. And then they want to be like, did you want them? Or do you ever want
Yeah,
them?
nobody ever leaves it at that first no. They never
No.
just
And
go, how's
it's,
the weather tomorrow looking? They don't do that.
yeah. And it's the same questions over and over. And it doesn't
Yeah.
matter how many times I prepare myself for the same questions, the same comments, the same. It's sometimes I'm just like, can you not ask me that?
Yeah. And I think, look, again, it's one of those things where I think it's reasonable to be frustrated. I do work, like my wife gets super pissed off about these things. Okay. She said something to people a couple times, like, hey, let that go. Nobody even wants to deal with this. Nobody
Mhm.
wants to hear it. It's not that it's almost like that negative thing they don't want to put on them in some way, or they just don't know what to say. What do you say when somebody, like when you say, yeah, I want children. I've so far been unable to have them. Well, what do you say at that? So I got to the point where there was a time when I would literally, just to stop a conversation, people would say, how many children do you have? I said, I got three alive, but one killed himself.
Ooh.
I had four, but one killed himself. Nobody knows what the fuck to say at that
Yeah.
point. They just
Yeah.
stop. And I'm like, want to talk about football? We could do that. You know, baseball, hockey, anything else, weather. But then I was like, that's cold because
Mhm.
they don't deserve to have that put on them. They didn't know what to say. They were just, it's like I'm punching them between the eyes. They don't know what to say at that
But
moment.
sometimes
Like
I want to do that. I'm like,
100%.
no, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know. But I get
Don't
like,
look, don't feel guilty about that either. It's a part of the passion that we as humans have. Like we have these passions and desires, and I would just say don't feel guilty about that or the frustration of it. What I would tell my wife in this situation would be, look, you gotta go back to Jesus on the cross. Forgive them for they know not what they do.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
truth is, I don't want them to know. Okay?
yeah,
I don't want you to know. I just want you to leave me alone. That's all I
yeah,
want you to do. Like, don't, because it just, all it is, like, they don't see it, and I don't know if this is for you, but for me, what they don't realize is they're just reminding me of everything, you know,
yeah.
reminding me of it. And then that's painful. So now that pain's got to go someplace, and it's probably going to go back on them. And my wife gets very upset about it. And I'm like, listen. So I changed that, and I was just like, I have four. And and then they would say, "Oh, how old are they?" So I give their ages, and I quickly calculate Heston's age, and I give them those ages. And then they're like, "So what do they do?" And I'm like, "They're all in different things." And I would say something. I'd say what Esau does, and I say something about what I imagine Heston would be doing today. And so I think I realized it was easier to play along. And I'm not like your situation's different, so I'm not suggesting that for this
Yeah.
situation. But it got easier. But then there's always that one person who's just not gonna fucking let it go, man. They're just not gonna let it go.
Well,
No,
that's where I'm like, I thought when I could say no, I don't have kids, that would just be the end of it. But it is amazing to me how much people push. They always ask, did you want kids? Do you want kids? Like, it always goes there. And I actually have a friend who's similar situation, and she said she just started telling people, I didn't want them. Nope, never wanted them. And
so you
then,
know what? I was literally just thinking that. It's like what would happen if you just said, "No, my husband and I we decided to go down a different path."
but then to me, that feels dishonest. And so then I'm like, and there was a time period where I was like, oh, yeah, I don't think I'll ever do that. But now I'm getting to the point where it's been so much. I'm like, I'm about ready there. I'm
Yeah.
ready to say
Yeah.
that. Like,
I
nope,
know it
wanted them.
does. It does. I can see how it carries like that. I'm
Yeah.
not being truthful about it because the truth is this is what I want, and I'm not being truthful about that. But yeah, I don't know. That man, I tell you, if some people would just take a hint, and I don't know why they can't take a hint, and it's not even it's beneficial for. It's not like we're like there's a purpose for this. It's not like I'm filling out papers with the hospital or like insurance. I'm
Yeah.
having to say, oh no, it's just my husband and I. It's not like any of that. It's just people are just. So that's one thing that I have started doing is pulling up before asking too many questions. It's like maybe they won't do it, but as a lesson to myself, I've gotten to where I ask much more kind of innocuous questions.
Yeah.
Like I almost don't ask people anymore how many children they have
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I don't, they could have lost one too. I don't
Yeah.
want to. It's just I've just gotten down to now. I know what old men. Now I know what old men are always like. how about that weather?
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
and I was like, don't you guys talk about anything else? And now I know why.
Yeah, because they've lived so much of that and they've
They don't
experienced all
they don't want
that.
to know it.
Yeah.
I don't want to ask. I don't want you to ask.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, what do you think about the weather? Hot out
Yeah.
there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so interesting. Well, I am going to wrap us up here. I feel like
Okay.
we could
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
talking for forever, and this is
Yeah,
an
yeah.
amazing conversation. And I'm so grateful to you for coming on and being so vulnerable because this stuff is, especially, I didn't realize that your son had only passed 4 years ago. So thank you so much for being open and
Yeah.
vulnerable about all of that too, because I know that's not easy. You have your book out. That is that pretty much everywhere books are sold?
Pretty much everywhere that Amazon sells.
Which is pretty
So,
much everywhere we
yeah,
buy
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Yeah, you can find it on Amazon. Probably the easiest way is just go to my website, askandycampbell.com. And from there's a link for the 15 core beliefs, and you can, that link will take you to Amazon. Otherwise, you got to go to the search bar and just type in Andy Campbell. I'm the second book because, as you can tell, this conversation has not been about my life as a transgendered person, which the first book
Okay.
is. Go
Okay.
to the second one because if you pick
Yep.
the first one, you're not going to find anything about this conversation in it.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know. We go back and forth as to whose name comes up first, but
That's fun.
use the second one or use the one that's the 15 core belief, overcoming life stuff as setbacks. But probably the easiest way is just go to the website and
Yep. And we'll
get
link
it there.
that in the show notes. So if
Yeah.
anybody wants an easier access to that, go ahead and look
Yeah.
at the show notes. Do you have, Andy, any final thoughts, parting words for my listeners? We had a million gems in this conversation.
Yeah, it
So
was great. I really enjoyed it, and I really do appreciate. I'm very grateful that we have a chance to have this conversation
same.
and have a talk. I would say, no matter what your mind is telling you right now, no matter how desperate you feel, someone asked me one time through all these things, what was I proud of? What was like the one thing I was proud of, or the most proud of? Can't remember how it was phrased, but it's basically that. And I thought, who would be proud of this? And then I thought about it some more, and I came up with this. I said, the thing I'm most proud of is that I have not taken away from the Creator his opportunity to move the universe in my favor. Of all the errors I've made, of all the things I've done, I never took away from the Creator his opportunity to move the universe in my favor. And so, what I would say to anyone who's struggling right now or who's been through very difficult times, don't quit.
Mm,
Give the universe a chance to be moved in your favor. And it may feel like a long time, and it may feel like it's never going to happen.
yeah.
Don't quit. That's the main thing. If you continue on, if you persevere, that's the only way to finish. You have to persevere. And so I guess my parting word would be no matter how bad it is, and even if you're thinking that guy doesn't understand how bad it is, I don't understand how bad your particular situation is. I don't comprehend
Yeah.
the details, but I do understand what it's like to be in a complete state of despair.
Mm,
And what I will tell you is the only way that I'm still here today is because I did not quit.
that's good. Thank you so much for this whole conversation. It's been amazing.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for listening. And Andy, again, thank you so much. I really can't tell you enough how much I've appreciated this conversation. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And we'll see you on the next episode.